Hello fun people, I'm Isaac Carlson, and today we're going to explore the Nightmare Before Christmas this Halloween as we dive into Sally's past life. And of course, if you're new here and you'd like to join this magical community of Disney fans, consider subscribing. We just crossed 600,000 subscribers, which is absolutely incredible, and I'm so excited to keep going and pushing to 1 million. The golden play button will be ours. Now, sure, Sally is a kind, caring, and thoughtful citizen of Halloween Town. She fits in well and adores the work that they all do, but she's not a traditional monster. In a town filled with ghosts, horrible clowns that can rip off their faces, and walking hanging trees, Sally is different because she was created by a resident of Halloween Town. She was brought to life by Dr. Finkelstein to serve him.
You're mine, you know. I made you with my own hands.
But before her life in Halloween Town began, I think Sally was born as a normal human girl who lived her life and died, and has only been reanimated by Dr. Finkelstein. But how could we possibly know this? Well, what's really cool about Sally is that once Dr. Finkelstein got fed up with her need to be free and her constant attempts to escape his grasp, we actually got a peek into the process as to how she came back to life as we see the doctor create his wife.
You will be a decided improvement over that treacherous Sally.
Throughout Finkelstein's lab, he seems to have a collection of bones, heads, and other body parts that he can stitch together as he pleases. And as we saw from the skeleton reindeer, with a blast of electricity, these remains can be brought to life. What I think is even more interesting, though, is the fact that Finkelstein put some of his own brain in his wife because he knew she would take on his interests and personality.
What a joy to think of all we'll have in common. We'll have conversations worth having.
What this means is that the creatures Finkelstein builds have personalities that arise based on the remains that are used to create them. It seems like Finkelstein collects the human remains of people throughout the cemetery next to the town, which we know is a gateway to the human world, and he uses those parts to build his creatures. The only way the Doctor can change, define, and structure his creation's behaviors is by being selective about the body parts he chooses before they are brought to life, specifically when it comes to the brain. Therefore, Sally's character is completely built off of the brain of someone who already lived their life. Sally was telling the truth that she couldn't stop her disobedient and carefree nature. It was ingrained within her.
I'm restless. I can't help it.
Sally did sometimes work for Finkelstein by doing things like cooking for him. There were times that she would pretend to be her maker's companion, but as her life started to take shape, he tried to hold her back from creating her own identity, even though he couldn't stop it. While Finkelstein seemed to want a friend or a lover, what he actually created was a rebellious daughter.
You're not ready for so much excitement.
Yes, I am.
And the truth is that when we look back at Sally throughout The Nightmare Before Christmas, it feels very clear that she didn't derive from the town, or at least was very different from the rest of the citizens. Even though she was recently reanimated by Dr. Finkelstein, she already had a deep knowledge of potions, plants, and spices, meaning she could have been a chef or a botanist or a gardener. When she brings a present for Jack, she doesn't try to scare him, but instead she shares the beauty of nature with him by conjuring an insect that certainly doesn't exist in Halloween Town. She summons a butterfly. And when Snow comes to the town for the first time and everyone is awed and mesmerized like Jack once was, she's unfazed by what she sees, possibly indicating she knows subconsciously that she's seen it all before. Sally came from a place beyond Halloween Town where she was immersed in a living and beautiful world. And this isn't a completely unprecedented thing. There are a lot of dead people in Halloween Town. Most notably, I've made videos describing Jack's prior life and how he became the Pumpkin King, which I've linked down below. Because in The Nightmare Before Christmas, we hear Jack admit that he was dead, and he is shocked by the fact that no one is dead in Christmas Town. Sure, Jack and Sally might not have clear memories of their past lives, but they each seem to have some type of deep connection to who they were before they died. And honestly, that's probably a big reason these two were drawn to one another. In a place filled with highly focused, passionate, and diligent workers, both Jack and Sally saw beyond their existences in the town because they knew there was more out there, and that gave them a special bond. Now, as far as where Sally's mind came from, the truth is that unlike Jack, Sally doesn't have the same kind of legendary status or reputation that persists across the globe. She has a lot less connections to other villains or different stories or different characters. I have to admit, I think a part of me thinks it's exciting to imagine Sally as a witch or a sorcerer in her old life, but I don't think that aligns with her place in the story. If Sally had magic or fantastic amounts of power or significant influence in the mystical realm, then she should have just appeared in Halloween Town with that role. Sally should have instantly flown through the air in the dead of night if that was who she was, but she didn't. That's not who she is. Before the events of The Nightmare Before Christmas, she was just a new servant to Finkelstein. So when we look at Sally, honestly, there's no clear way to even know a great deal about who she was in her life outside of her behaviors, especially since we can't truly understand how she died. She's pieced together not because that's how her life ended, it's because she's a combination of many different corpses that were all found and bound together by Finkelstein. She's unrecognizable to who she was as a human. Again, Finkelstein was even under the belief that she was a new entity completely, that he crafted through science, although that is definitely not true. Sally is absolutely a magical being now. Sally has no feeling when she jumps out of her tower or stitches herself up. Her limbs can be completely controlled even when they aren't connected to her, and she doesn't have any bones or muscles or blood or anything. Sally's body is stuffed to the brim with dead leaves. She's alive because of the magic of Halloween, and that also plays into why Sally saw Jack's twisted version of Christmas burning. I think Sally's premonition came to her because she was the person that had the deep connection to Jack, and the magic of the holiday chose her to have the vision so that she could pull him away from his dangerous ambitions. Sally was an entity who helped serve Halloween, which is just one great reason she eventually became Jack's pumpkin queen. In reality, I think Sally's mind came from someone who was trying to get their footing in the world before their life was cut short. That's why she fought so hard to have some autonomy, respect, and appreciation in Halloween Town. I think Sally's soul came from a young woman who always looked at the world with wonder and wanted to contribute to it, which was why she wanted to help Jack as much as she could. Sally's brain was originally in someone who wanted to be free, to explore everything there was to offer, and to eventually find love, and she found that after she died, was buried, and somehow ended up in the spookiest holiday town of them all. Fun people, if you have found any value from my videos and want to support the expansion of this content and the community we're growing, consider becoming a producer of the show on Patreon. You get exclusive channels on our Discord, and you can gain access to the exclusive video podcast Behind the Magic, where I discuss all of my secret projects I'm working on. To learn more, click the link to Patreon down below. Thanks for watching, have a magical day, and of course, happy Halloween.